Did you know that there's a hidden reason behind Japan's surrender in World War II that goes beyond the atomic bombs and the Soviet invasion? Today, we're uncovering the obscure and often overlooked factors that compelled Japan to end the war. From secret diplomatic maneuvers to internal power struggles, we will delve into the depths of history, revealing the untold stories that shaped the outcome of World War II. Stay until the end to uncover a surprising twist in Japan's surrender that might change how you view the end of this monumental conflict. Explore history in a simple and intriguing way. World War II devastated the world in the years leading up to 1945. As part of the Axis powers, Japan had expanded its empire across Asia and the Pacific, clashing fiercely with Allied forces. The Pacific War, a significant component of World War II, witnessed fierce and harsh battles, ultimately isolating Japan and subjecting it to mounting pressure. By early 1945, the tide of war had turned decisively against Japan. The Allied forces, particularly the United States, had gained significant ground in the Pacific, recapturing territories and inflicting heavy losses on Japanese forces. The relentless air raids over Japan, including the firebombing of Tokyo in March 1945, had already caused widespread destruction and civilian casualties, eroding the morale and capacity of Japan to continue the war. However, the events of August 1945 became the focal point of historical debate. The United States, having successfully tested an atomic bomb in July, decided to use this new weapon in an attempt to bring a swift end to the war. The bombings of Hiroshima on August 6th and Nagasaki on August 9th were unprecedented in their destructive power, instantly killing tens of thousands and leaving the cities in ruins. At the same time, the geopolitical landscape underwent a significant change when the Soviet Union joined the war against Japan. On August 8th, the Soviets declared war and quickly invaded Japanese-held territories in Manchuria. This sudden move by the Soviet Union, previously neutral towards Japan, was a significant strategic and psychological blow. It dashed Japan's hopes of using Soviet mediation to negotiate a more favorable surrender. These pivotal events of August 1945, the atomic bombings, and the Soviet invasion converged to create a situation where Japan's surrender became inevitable. The internal political dynamics within Japan's leadership, already grappling with the prospect of defeat, now faced an unprecedented crisis. On August 15, 1945, these factors culminated in Japan's surrender announcement, ending the Pacific War and signaling a profound shift in the global order. As we delve into the historical discourse surrounding Japan's surrender, we encounter two dominant schools of thought, the orthodox and the revisionist views. The widely acknowledged perspective, commonly taught, claims that the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki played a crucial role in shaping Japan's decision to surrender. This perspective argues that the sheer scale and unprecedented destruction wrought by these bombings were pivotal. It posits that the instant and horrific destruction of both cities, with immediate and overwhelming casualties, decisively broke Japan's will to continue the war. Those who agree with this view emphasize that the bombing shocked everyone, not just in Japan but worldwide. They believe this changed how wars are fought and left Japan with no other choice but to surrender. On the other hand, the revisionist view challenges this narrative, suggesting a more complex interplay of factors. Revisionists argue that it was the Soviet Union's entry into the war, not the atomic bombs, that served as the critical trigger for Japan's surrender. On August 8, 1945, the Soviet Union announced war against Japan and rapidly invaded Japanese-controlled Manchuria. This sudden and unexpected move by the Soviets, previously neutral to Japan, is seen by revisionists as a significant strategic and psychological blow to the Japanese leadership. This perspective contends that Japan's hopes for a negotiated peace, potentially mediated by the Soviets, were dashed by this invasion. The revisionist argument underscores the importance of geopolitical strategy and the impact of Soviet aggression in compelling Japan to reassess its position and ultimately choose to surrender. Diving deeper into the perspectives that define the historical debate about Japan's surrender in World War II, we find a trove of intriguing information, evidence, and lesser-known facts that underline the complexity of this momentous event. Orthodox historians, who argue that the atomic bombings were the decisive factor, often cite key evidence. After the bombing of Hiroshima, which claimed over 70,000 lives, and Nagasaki, with an immediate death toll of around 40,000, the Supreme War Council of Japan faced an unprecedented crisis. Records from the council's meetings highlight the shock and dismay felt by Japan's leaders. The bombings also had a profound psychological impact on the Japanese public, amplifying calls for peace within the nation. These bombings represented a new and terrifying type of warfare, with some Japanese officials fearing that further resistance would lead to the destruction of the Japanese people. Conversely, revisionist historians point to the Soviet Union's actions as pivotal. They note that Japan had been seeking Soviet mediation for a conditional surrender, preserving some terms like the preservation of the monarchy. The Soviet invasion of Manchuria, commencing on August 9th, the same day as the Nagasaki bombing, shattered these hopes. The rapid Soviet advance, capturing over 600,000 Japanese troops, was a significant military and psychological blow. This invasion also negated Japan's Ketsugo plan, which aimed to defend the home islands against an anticipated Allied invasion, hoping to inflict heavy casualties that would lead to a negotiated peace. Also, vital Japanese officials' declassified documents and diary entries reveal a complex interplay of fear, strategy, and desperation in the Japanese leadership. For example, Emperor Hirohito's diary hinted at his deep concerns about the Soviet invasion. He feared it would not only jeopardize Japan's territorial integrity, but also potentially ignite communist insurgencies within Japan itself. This situation explains a nation grappling with the harrowing realities of war it could no longer sustain. Whether swayed by the unprecedented destruction of atomic bombs or the strategic and psychological implications of the Soviet invasion, Japan's decision to surrender was influenced by a confluence of extraordinary pressures and fears, marking a pivotal moment in global history. As World War II neared its end in 1945, Japan faced a critical decision influenced not just by military losses, but also by a powerful tool: psychological warfare. This hidden factor played a significant role in Japan's surrender, a decision that reshaped the world. Psychological warfare, primarily through propaganda, aimed to weaken Japan's will to fight. The Allies, understanding the value of this warfare, intensified their efforts to demoralize Japanese forces and citizens. Leaflets dropped over Japanese cities outlined the dire situation and urged surrender. These messages highlighted Japan's isolation, the might of the Allied forces, and the destruction already wrought on Japanese cities, sowing seeds of doubt and fear. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki compounded the impact of psychological warfare. The bombs were a shocking display of power, causing unprecedented destruction and loss of life. But beyond the physical devastation, they sent a clear message to Japan about the Allies' capabilities and their readiness to use such devastating weapons again. The fear of more atomic attacks created a state of panic and despair among the Japanese people and leadership. In addition to the bombings, the Soviet Union's sudden declaration of war and invasion of Manchuria dealt a significant psychological blow. Japan had hoped for Soviet neutrality or even mediation. The Soviet betrayal shattered these hopes and added to the growing sense of inevitability of defeat. Speaking of pivotal battles, it's worth mentioning another crucial event in the Pacific, the Battle of Okinawa. This battle, one of the bloodiest and most intense of the Pacific War, showcased the brutal reality of combat and had significant implications for the final stages of the war. But for a more in-depth understanding of this critical battle and its impact, we invite you to watch our detailed video on this event. These combined factors, the targeted propaganda, the fear instilled by the atomic bombings, and the shock of the Soviet invasion, created a psychological environment where surrender became the only conceivable option for Japan. Faced with overwhelming odds and the prospect of utter destruction, Japan chose to surrender, bringing an end to World War II. This decision was not just a result of military defeats, but also a testament to the power of psychological warfare in shaping the course of history. As we wrap up our look at Japan's surrender in World War II, let's remember a key point. History is complex. The end of the war wasn't just about atomic bombs or the Soviet invasion, it's also about the stories behind these events. Post-war memoirs and evidence have their own issues. After the war, people often tried to make themselves look good, so we must be careful about believing everything they say or write. It's not just about one person or group completing a decision, many different people and factors played a part. The end of World War II teaches us that significant historical events are usually not simple. Like a puzzle, many parts make them up. Understanding this helps us see history in a more transparent, more honest way. It's not just about learning facts, but also about understanding the bigger picture. This story shows us that history constantly changes and has different views, and that's what makes learning it so intriguing.